Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh is brought to you by
Harry Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, West Michigan Eye Care Associates, Eric Hall Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Calder Financial, Grand Management Group, Encore Business Group, and Rydan Investments.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh.
Stay informed and stay vigilant. Happy Chocolate Chip Cookie Day. That's a good one. We got Milk Chocolate Day and Chocolate Chip Cookie Day in back-to-back weeks. I wonder if that was planned, because those seem to be very synergistic products, don't they, Big G?
And that's why I wear Omar the Tent Maker size shirts.
He had that line pre-show, and it's a great line. I can't believe how good that line is. But what's your favorite cookie then, though? We talked, you gave us some good chocolates the last time. What's the favorite cookie?
I love Chips Ahoy. I love Oreos, even though they're not chocolate chip. I don't know if they're considered a cookie, but Nutter Butters.
I feel like that's a cookie. That's a good one.
Nope.
That's a strong one.
Yum.
Yeah, I don't want to limit us just to chocolate chip cookies. I think we just open up the cookie category, because I have a feeling Ryan Mathews, who's on the line, will have a cookie for us. So we're going to bring him in a moment here. Mom's in studio with us. Rex is working on the comms, but we're happy to bring on this gentleman here. He's one of our favorites, one of our most frequent guests. He's with Pride of Detroit and works on the podcast side of things. They do a great job there. So we're curious what Ryan Mathews' favorite cookie is.
Oh, well, hey, thanks for having me on, guys. I came prepared with Lions talk. I don't know about cookie talk, but I think right off the top of my head, I'm a real big fan of an oatmeal raisin cookie, like a good oatmeal raisin cookie.
That's a good
Hard
one.
to top it.
I like that choice. That's a good one. Yeah, this all started, Ryan, because one day I started talking barbecue with Dr. Liao when we were supposed to be talking injuries, like right in the middle of the season, like when everybody was hurt. Well, I was talking about barbecue with Dr. Liao for 10 minutes in his segment, and that's kind of how this started. So it's a little bit of a curveball at the beginning of the segment here, but I'm glad you got notes here. This is going to be kind of a freewheeling discussion. I saw we just had some news, some injury news, and one of the things that I like that you guys do at Pride of Detroit is the whole ins and outs, but I like that you're the dissenter on the ins and outs. I feel like you're the one that it typically dissents from the group, so that's why you're a good one to talk to, because you're not getting into all this aggregation that's happening at Pride of Detroit here.
Oh, yeah, I like to swim against the current, There's nothing wrong with going against the grain, especially when you pick your guys. Everybody has their guys in training camp. I had my guys. I will toot my own horn, and I will say that I was one of the few. I think I was only one of two who had Zach Cunningham on the inside coming into camp, and then all of a sudden, ooh, Zach Cunningham, he can play will linebacker. So, put that feather in my cap. But, I love the roster bubble stuff, the way that the 53 all will shake itself out. It's the hot topic of discussion during the summer months for sure.
I was going to bring up the Cunningham because I was right with you. I would even take it a step further. We did have Dr. Liao on last week, and we were talking injuries, and I was asking him about the hamstring strain, and he was talking about how that's a common camp injury when they're trying to work things out contract wise and everything. But I was wondering, this is maybe a step too far, but I've been in the Cunningham camp. I know that Cunningham isn't going to replace Anzalone. That is not the argument here. But with Cunningham playing so well in place of Anzalone, I'm wondering if he saw that and kind of went, okay, I think it might be time to get back to business here. I need some reps. I'm getting older, and this guy is doing pretty well, the former league leader in tackles. Maybe I need to make sure nobody's nipping at my heels here.
Yeah, maybe there's a touch of that. I think that for Alex Anzalone in his situation specifically, him playing this final year of his contract in Detroit is the best business for both sides. I think that the cost of having such a young, talented roster for the Detroit Lions is that you have to make some hard decisions. And one of those hard decisions is, can we extend a 31-year-old linebacker when we have to take care of Aiden Hutchinson, when we want to think about, is Jameson Williams worth the investment? Have to re-sign Brian Branch potentially next offseason, talking about maybe Sam Laporta. So there's a lot of money that's going to be due to younger more foundational players. And when you talk about an off-ball linebacker, Alex Anzalone has been awesome. He's been a revelation. He's really, for the most part, except for the, injury that he dealt with last season, which was, a freak forearm fracture, been healthy, been reliable, been one of the, stabilizing factors on that Lions defense. But like I said, the cost of having such a young and talented roster is that, maybe we don't pay and extend the 31-year-old linebacker. So it works for Alex Anzalone too, though. Like I could really get the sense that it wasn't going to be a long back and forth. Like the extra guarantees that they pushed into his contract to, kind of suffice him and say like, all right, get back on the field, guy, because if you have a great season this year, which, would you really want to be? I can probably count the other defenses on Alex Anzalone that I'd want to play on in a contract year on one hand, right? Go out there, have a great season, and go get yourself paid. I think that's why it kind of works to both sides' benefit to have Alex Anzalone hungry in a contract season going into 2025.
That's what's interesting to me about this situation. There's such a duality of this situation because he's the unquestioned team leader on defense, but he's also the first one to kind of do this, to in this era, to do a little bit of a hold in or whatever you want to call it. And so those two things are interesting juxtaposed against each other. Then you have the contract situation, which his body of work, I'm a big Anzalone fan. It's not going to probably sound like it at times during what I'm about to say, but he's done very well with the Lions. I completely agree with you. But the fact that his body of work, he's by far had his best years with the Lions. So the idea that he hits the open market, what is he actually going to be worth on the open market, and what situation is he going to get to, which I think is exactly where you were going with the best for both sides thing. That's an interesting juxtaposition of this situation. So there's just a few things here that this is a little bit of a precedent for the Lions, and I don't think I would have had Anzalone being the one to set it.
Yeah. I all great points, right? Like, and I think the thing that you bring up that is really important is, talk about a team captain last year. Talk about a guy who comes back week 18, Sunday Night Football, division on the line. Alex Anzalone gets that loudest route, or that loudest roar from Ford Field when he enters the field. I think we have some memory deficit issues, right? Like, yes, Alex Anzalone was awesome. The Lions won that game, but it wasn't like he's the most important piece on that defense. Like, when you talk about their base set, like, I think the Lions, more so than a lot of other teams in the NFL, they do like having three linebackers on the field. Because it lends itself well to run defense. That's what they're predicated on, stopping the run. You just have guys like Malcolm Rodriguez when he eventually gets healthy, and it seems like he's going to be healthier sooner than anticipated. You have Zach Cunningham in camp. You have a player like Grant Stewart. You even have Derek Barnes, who, is your Sam linebacker, but if you want to go 4-2-5 on your back end, I think Derek Barnes is a guy who can slide over and play the will linebacker position right next to Jack Campbell. So I think that's why Alex Anzalone kind of took stock and said, okay, well, you know what? I don't think this is where I'm going to end up long term, but this is the best opportunity in the here and now to hopefully make myself some money come next March.
I totally hear what you're saying. Yeah, the Bills game last year was an interesting game, obviously from multiple fronts. That's where everybody kind of started going with the whole injury angle, which was weird because it was like, there's been a lot of injuries before this. It's not, but it kind of caught up to them that game, obviously against a good team, good offense. And Anzalone seemed to be one of the proverbial straws that broke the camel's back. And then he was one of the ones that correlated to them kind of going downhill defensively, and then when he came back, they ticked up. But I'm with you that that's not necessarily Anzalone, especially in a vacuum. It's the idea that, okay, if you move Campbell into Anzalone's spot, that's not a bad exchange, but it's more replacing Campbell at that point when you already had Barnes out. You don't have the defensive line as stout, and so you're having to eat up more time. The back end is a little weakened as well. So between all of those things, Anzalone was the connecting piece as far as the timing, but it was more just the timing of his injury relative to everybody else. Whereas if his was earlier, say if he got hurt when Barnes did, and Barnes got hurt when he did, I don't think he would have been that straw. I think he would have just been one of the injuries in the early season that then piled up by the end of the season.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a totally fair characterization. And it goes a lot to, when was the last time everybody saw Aiden Hutchinson on the field, right? If you think about the impact that he's going to make now that he's healthy and he's back, well, then all of a sudden we aren't so forgetful and we remember that he was a guy who was on pace to be Defensive Player of the Year. So, yeah, it definitely has a lot to do with, what have you done for me lately? Can I remember when you were impactful? And then when you get back on that field, you kind of remind everybody, right? So, it's going to be a big season for him, for multiple reasons like we covered. But I think this season, this Lions defense is the best spot for Alex Anzalone, and I think he realized that it's his best spot too.
And I'm curious what you think about this, because the line, I'm going to build up to a bigger question probably after the break, but the linebackers, I'll start with that unit since we're talking about them. I feel like that's a unit that's clearly upgraded this year with now locking in Anzalone. Obviously you had Barnes, but you only had him for right at the beginning of the season there. You get Rodrigo back once he comes back, but adding, like you said, Stewart and Cunningham, I think that gives them a different element and kind of right sizes the depth chart a little bit more than last year. So that seems like a unit that has gotten a little bit of an upgrade as long as the health kind of holds and everybody comes back healthy.
For sure. And the special teams, right? Like, I know Anthony Pittman is the guy who's on the roster bubble as well, but he was another key addition. I mean, he's obviously not a guy that you want to see taking, weeks worth of snaps on the defensive side of the ball and playing linebacker. But, you got Stewart, who I think is going to be, he's really going to play himself into being a fan favorite. He brings the special teams element as well. You talked about Rodrigo. The linebacker depth feels really solid, I think, in my opinion. It's the kind of the long-term health of it. We just talked about all the Alex Anzalone stuff. It's that long-term outlook and that long-term view, because really the only two guys or I guess three guys when you count Stewart as well, but it's Jack Campbell, it's Derek Barnes, and it's Grant Stewart at this point as far as contracts go. So we'll see long-term, but I think right now in the here and now, Ryan, when you hear Dan Campbell say things like Jack Campbell has really taken ownership of this defense, this is his defense, that's exactly what you want to hear from that guy in terms of his progression. So as far as who I'm excited to see the most, I'm really to see that third-year jump out of Jack Campbell.
That's a big one. I do think he quietly had a very good year last year. I say quietly. I think some people noticed, but with linebacker, it is tough. They're reinforcing that defensive line, or at least they're trying, in front of them, and that always takes some heat off the linebackers. But I want to kind of return to this theme, because one of the things that I was going to ask you at the beginning of the interview that I'm going to ask you after the break is if you think the team as a whole, the roster as a whole, is better than last year, because I feel like some people are on the fence about that. I have an opinion, but I want to get your opinion on that after the break. But we'll talk with Ryan Mathews after the break and get his answer to that. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh on Jethro FM.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh.